Okay, so what is the title of this talk? Let's see. Non-duality. What does consciousness mean? Okay. What does consciousness mean? It's a pretty simple title. So consciousness means so many different things to different people. I came from the school of like Ramesh Balsekar, Roger Castillo, and Ramesh has the book, Consciousness Speaks, and he used consciousness. A lot of teachers use awareness, and I understand why they use awareness, because in psychology we use the conscious and the subconscious. So that can become confusing. And I use awareness as like personal awareness, like the ability to move attention. So I use awareness as attention. So it is complex. And some people that talk about non-duality don't even bring in the word consciousness. They just say this is nothing as everything and everything as nothing. And that consciousness is just a functioning. Which I'm open for that way of teaching, and I can see like that, I suppose, is the greater truth. But consciousness is a great way to speak maybe in the beginning. Well, maybe this isn't the beginning, these aren't beginning classes, but it's a great way to speak maybe to lots of people. Like the nothing and everything bit is something that's got to be deeply seen. So that consciousness is not a thing. It's nothing appearing as everything. The experiencer, the consciousness, is empty and is all things. It knows itself by its appearances. But this is really complex to put into language and to communicate. And consciousness is a great bridge. Like once when a friend explained it to me like this, or they said that consciousness was like a bridge, or like an angel with one wing in the everything and one wing in the nothingness. Or consciousness was the bridge between everything and nothingness. And I think that's like a really beautiful description. But it's like poetry. It can't really be described really accurately. Like I can hear really analytical minds like, what does that mean? What does that mean? So when I'm talking about consciousness, I'm talking about if you had anesthesia, you would be unconscious. If you got whacked over the head, passed out, you're unconscious. There's no consciousness of anything. when you actually have anesthesia and when you get knocked out or when you're in deep sleep, there is actually consciousness there, but it's just not conscious of anything. So there's nothing appearing, so there's nothing happening. So that in order for there to be consciousness, there needs to be things to be conscious of, otherwise it's non-existence and it's just over instantly. So you don't experience that, obviously, because there's no consciousness. But when I'm saying that, is that, like, I'm talking about the consciousness that's there when you wake up. And when you wake up in the mornings from deep sleep, you think you wake up and you describe yourself as a name, you describe yourself as a title, you describe yourself as a thing, and you think, I've woken up. But actually, the world has come back. So in deep sleep, there is consciousness, but there's no world. So there's no experience of it. There can only be experiencing with things. So it's the world, and that doesn't actually happen because it's like in a heartbeat, it's in an instant. So and then the world comes back, and then shortly after that, you come back and you think you've woken up, and that's the way we talk about it. That's language, like I woke up. But actually the world came back, so things started to appear again. So then there was experience and time and space and distance. And then you came in and you said, I am conscious, whereas consciousness has been there the whole time. That the consciousness is your base, and it's actually your birthright as well. Like when you wake up in the morning, you don't sit there prior to waking up and say, okay, I'm going to turn on my consciousness now. Consciousness happens and it's out of the person's control. It gets turned on. And maybe sometimes you think, oh God, please don't wake up. I don't want to wake up this morning. Or maybe you're like, yeah, wake up. But you don't have a choice. You might think, oh, I turned my alarm clock on, so I have a choice. But actually you don't. You don't have a choice whether the consciousness comes on or not. You don't have any control over that. And you kind of know it because a lot of people are afraid of death. So they know that consciousness doesn't belong to them. Like it isn't controlled by the person. So when you wake up in the morning, the first thing that gets switched on is consciousness. It's already switched on. Okay, so first thing that gets switched on is the world. And there is this awakeness that happens. And this awakeness is not found somewhere. You'll never find consciousness. You'll never get out a magnifying glass and be like, I found it. Or a mirror and be able to see this consciousness that's watching the person. It's looking. The person always wants to find consciousness. But it's like trying to catch air in a net. It's impossible. So the person hears this and it's like, what is consciousness? I want to understand it. And you can understand it to an extent. This can be like really juicy to the person. But in the understanding, there is something that's watching that. So there is something that knows that's happening. There is a person understanding it. There is thought understanding it. And then there's something that's watching that. So all experiences have to be watched by something. And you is an experience. So everything you can describe about yourself is something that appears. So if it's something that appears, it's not the experiencer. So I like candy. I am good. I am bad. I am righteous. I am beautiful. I am ugly. I am happy. I've done that one. I am rich. I am poor. I am fat, I'm thin. So notice that all of the descriptions that you have about yourself, I'm white, I'm black, I'm American, I'm English, I'm Iraqi. All of these descriptions are being experienced. So there's something prior to you. So there's something prior to the thoughts, to the feelings, to the names, to the labels, to the ideas. And there's also something prior to the one that's trying to get to spirituality. So there's something that's watching that. So you could imagine it a bit like virtual reality. So everything that appears in the virtual reality is, so if you're in one of those headsets watching a virtual reality, everything that appears in the virtual reality isn't the one that's watching the virtual reality. You could do it about the film as well. Everything that appears in the film on the screen isn't the person watching the film. You could go the other way and you could be like, everything is you, everything is consciousness. But we're just going the nothing route at the moment. It's like such a contradiction, and our language can't really sustain it. So anything that appears isn't it. So consciousness isn't found in someone that understands something, because that would be a limitation, that would be a thing, that would be a separation. So consciousness isn't found in a thought, in a feeling, in an experience, in bliss, in goodness, in badness, in righteousness, in time, in space. Consciousness is that which knows it. So it's just like if you imagine a film, so there's somebody sitting in a cinema watching a film, and there's a character that's trying to tell everybody that they're all in a film, and trying to point out to the audience member, to show everyone that they're in a film. But if that audience member isn't part of the film, if they're just watching the film, then the actress or the actor in the film can't show you the audience. It's like a recorded film. So it can't point outside the film, it can't point to the audience member, it can't point to the one that's watching the film. It can only be happening inside the film. So the one that's like, wake up, look, there's somebody watching us, there's something watching us. And you can't find that within the film, unless that was part of the film. You could do it the other way around. You could say the person in the film is trying to tell all the other actors that this is a film being projected onto a screen, and she can't find the screen in the film. So she's like, everyone, look, this is being projected onto a screen. And she can't find that screen in the film. Just like you can't find consciousness in the film. So you can't find consciousness in experiences. So that which is watching cannot be defined as a thing, cannot be found in a thing. It's watching, it's experiencing. And that's who you truly are, this watching. And this watching is empty, and it's limitless. It doesn't stop or start anywhere. So this watching is everything. It's not separate from the things that it sees. And that's your experience. Like, am I inside or outside of your consciousness? Is this wall behind you inside or outside of your consciousness? We often think we're conscious, and we are conscious, and our consciousness stops here, and then everything else happens outside of that. Whereas that's not true. Your experience is everything's appearing inside consciousness. It's not even actually inside. Everything is consciousness, because you don't experience an outside, but it's just words. Who you are is free. What you are as consciousness has never started or stopped. It's never existed in time. It's never going somewhere. It's never good or bad. It's just here. It's just present, experiencing. What happens is the consciousness and the person seem to get entwined, so there is an attachment to the person. And then it believes that I am conscious. I'm the person. I've done good things, I've done bad things, I've made mistakes, I'm right, I'm wrong, I'm guilty, I'm shameful. And none of that is true. There is no person. There is an appearance of the person, so you could say the character appears with the body, and the character seems to be time-based. But there also is no character. Like, where is the character now? You're not guilty for anything the character did. The character is a play that's happening. But that's not speaking on the character level. Like, the character might feel guilty, but that's not who you are. Who you are is beyond that. And the character that feels guilty is something that belongs to a body. It's a pattern of thought that arises in the brain, and then the body has a vibration with that guilt, because a pattern that arises in the body. And there's nothing wrong or right with that, it's just what the body does. But that's not you, that's not the experiencer. What happens is that vibration appears, that one that feels guilty appears, and then the consciousness, and then they meld together. And it feels like that guilty person is listening and is watching. Whereas that guilty person or non-guilty person is an experience happening in who you are. And it couldn't be any other way. Like, it's not in your control. That person is happening. This, and on the human level, the non-duality can cut a lot of like strings to distorted psychological games that are played with the person. When the person believes that they're the doer, then they create lots of excess thinking and dramas that aren't true. So it can relax the psychology of the person. It could also like have a negative effect on the psychology of the person. Could make them feel meaningless or something on the psychological level. But that's what non-duality isn't meant to be, a personal thing, although I can see how non-duality can relax the person. It's an impersonal thing. It's pointing to something that's beyond that. Like, your essence isn't guilty. Your essence isn't shameful. Your essence hasn't done anything wrong. And that's who and what you always are. Neither is the character. The character is a formation appearing that's out of the character's control. The character is being played. That was aggressive. What happens when the consciousness and the person are attached is that seeking appears. So when you are detached, or when you're attached to the person, there is a detachment from consciousness. There is a feeling of losing consciousness, even though you're not conscious of that. There's a feeling of losing it, and it creates seeking. And this seeking is the belief that happiness is found in time, whereas happiness is found in this moment. It's not found in time. So it's not found in getting something. It's found right here, pardon me. Okay, maybe we begin with the questions.